Howdy, all of you delicious people. I am here today to view the Peripheral, Season 1, Episode 2, or Episode Dose. So, if the pilot episode to me was great, we then turn around in the second episode and go into filler. Isn't that great? We do have an action sequence at the beginning of this, but then the rest of the episode is filled with dialogue, and I'm like, this is boring. Like, I almost was to kind of fall asleep during some of the dialogue because I'm like, man, this is freaking boring. Uh, really, when looking at it, there wasn't like a real single mission compared to like the first episode. So I'm like, is this what the show is just gonna be now? Which I hope it's not. Or really, I'm hoping we're getting back to like the mission part of it. But I don't know. Plus also there were some weird goofy things that I didn't quite understand uh in the first pilot episode. Like there were certain things where it's like, okay, what was the thing that Flynn had to go on and like scan her eye? I thought that was a little confusing. But also come to find out, I also like there were some interesting things in here for this episode, but again, it was just watered down by dialogue, and so it was just like immediately from an episode to now just really being a okay episode is to really just uh be a real turn. But so anyways, what is this episode about? So we have Flynn that goes on to realize that her family and friends, of course her avatar gaming guys, are to all be in jeopardy because we of course have these military men with these see-through cars making their way to try to kill them off, like the kind of cliffhanger part of the first episode. So we end up having the action sequence of here so rushed that really the focus moment was Flynn trying to protect her mother. But then after that, we of course have Burton now needing some intel from Flynn, and so Flynn has to go back into now talking to Wilf. And when Flynn does that, we realize that Flynn is in her own avatar that actually looks like her. And we end up also seeing Burton's avatar that, of course, was killed by a guy named Daniel, who is now talking to a woman named Mullen, which I'll go on and talk about like more specifics of that. Really, what kind of goes on between the dialogue of these two characters is basically a review from the last episode, telling us like what all they've already done and so on and so forth. So, but also it seems if we are to go on to, of course, have Flynn, who is to get a new avatar, it seems that we're also going to find out that there is going to also be another character who is to go on and get an avatar as well, or a like I think they end up calling it a specific term for this, like a stub. But anyways, so we have Wilf, who is going on to not only try and talk to uh, Alito West, we also have Wilf who is talking to a guy named Lev. And so it seems that Wilf is to take Flynn to go and talk to Lev and the people that he is to be with. And so we seem to go on and have certain people who are already counting out Wilf as to not be the go-to guy, and Lev is just like, oh no, like I'm sure like he is the right guy for the job. So really with that, I think that is most of the episode in a nutshell right there. uh the Corbo Pickett guy, the guy who went on to kind of smash Cash's head into the bar. We will see a story with him that it's like, okay, like this is pretty interesting. Um, we are to also go on, and the officer that we ended up seeing in the last episode, we of course will, Constantine will have him go on and do his little like side mission, it seems, or he'll go on and discover something is what I would rather have wanted to say there, as well as Constantine going on and talking to Burton and realizing that it seems there's a lot of cars that is parked into Burton's by Burton's house, and Constantine will start to have some suspicions. So, with that said, I think that covers most of the teeing up part of this episode because there isn't much beyond just dialogue, and immediately I groan about that. So, with that said, I think it's about that time to just go into the double five time territory because it's about that time yet again to, of course, go into spoiler time. Spoiler time, it's about that time again to spoil this episode. Uh, if you guys are also going on and maybe trying to need somewhere to see a number of kinds of content because maybe Amazon isn't quite where it's at, you can also go on to a number of new release reviews that I've gone on and done, and you would see that there is a number of apps that you can go on through the time of which that I've been on here, and you can go on and see whatever you'd like. If it seems that you're wanting to finally be able to see content from stuff that you would have to have a paywall for, you can go on and go into any new release review, or more than likely just movies that are pretty rare to dare say see anywhere. You can go on and check out a number of different apps. So it's not an ad that I'm stating. I'm just like, nah, just hey, if you're looking for other kind of things. Also, I went on and just saw Strange Days. And that was the thing that I tied into uh, this show with, and I honestly didn't know much about Strange Days, so I kind of was thinking, I'm like, well, Strange Days seems a lot like this, but come to find out, like Strange Days, maybe not so much like this. Like I would say that like Brain Scan seems more like this than anything. Um, so, anyways, let's go on into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time you spoil this episode. So, in the beginning of it, the most interesting part about this whole entire episode is really just this battle sequence, because we go on and have Burton and all the guys who are on the video game from before, like Reese and stuff like that, all those guys that you saw before are now here, talking to Burton. And so they end up starting to grab all their weaponry, and they are, of course, thinking that these military guys have made a massive mistake in trying to deal with them, because, of course, Burton, as well as all these guys, are to have their haptics, their, I guess, high optics or whatever. So it seems that they're going to go on and be able to spot these guys, or be able to take them out, because they are advanced. They have like eye advancements and stuff like that. So we go on to have these men come in, and we are to try to have Burton's guys kind of dispatch them fairly quickly. We have Burton that is telling Flynn to go inside the house and to try to protect their mother. Flynn tries to go on and wake up her mother, to then realize that, like, she's just gonna power sleep through all of this. So Flynn then goes on through the house and is to notice that there is a guy making his way into the house. We have Flynn, who is to turn on her little Roomba, or whatever little robot thing that kind of vacuums or cleans up everything. And so the mercenary comes in and shoots the little Roomba. And so we then have Flynn, who runs off to go on and knock this guy over, and runs for this double barrel shotgun. And when the guy gets back up and is to make his way through this door or doors, we have Flynn that is going on and stating for this guy to drop his gun, and Burton from a long ways off ends up shooting this guy. And so we have this moment where it's like, oh, okay, great. Like, luckily Burton was there at the right time to kill this guy, because who knows if Flynn was going to actually kill him or not. So after that is to go on and happen here, we have Burton that talks to Flynn, and he's just like, well, like, the guys kind of talked, and like, we either decided that we were going to turn ourselves in and get arrested for all these murders, or we were to go on and decide that we were just going to bury the bodies and just hope for the best. So we have Burton that is to take Flynn and have her go on and get intel. And so let me go on and also set this up. So Wilf is to go on and speak to Lydia West. And really, from the conversation between these two people, we have West that immediately realizes that Wilf is to not bump into her by any kind of accident. And so West is immediately asking Wilf, it's like, well, who is really interested in like, in knowing, like, me, and so on and so forth. And so Wilf is to go on and ask, like, well, hey, like, we can pay you a lot of money for you to go on and help us. And it seems that West may be interested. So that then goes on to have Wilf, who is getting a call from Lev at 5 in the morning, stating like, "Hey man, like, I have a car for you." And Wilf is like, "Man, it's 5 in the morning. I don't want to go anywhere." And Lev tells Wilf, it's like, "Well, here's the thing. Like, I pay a lot of money for you to go on and do your job, so you're gonna do it." And so Wilf ends up going on and is to state, like, well, why should I go on and do this? And Left is like, because there's a possibility that you can find out about the leader. And so Wilf is just like, okay, you got my attention. So we go on to we have Left, who I believe is talking to Ash. I could be wrong about that. But so Ash is stating that she feels that Wilf is just a guy that you uh, kind of hand off money to when you yourself do not want to get shot at or killed or whatever. Like, Wilf looks to just be an expendable guy, and like, really, she thinks he's not going to go on and be violent or do whatever he needs to do to get the job done. And Lef is going on uh, and is to make Ash feel otherwise by stating it's like, well, you could think that this guy doesn't look like he's going to be the violent type, but when Wilf is to get motivated, he will do anything that he will do to get the job done because that's who he is. And especially when there may be a leader out there, like Wilf is going to go on and take whoever out that he needs to get this. So we get all that dialogue out of the way. So Flynn ends up showing up, and she, of course, is to be as Flynn because the Burden Avatar. We have Daniel going on and talking to Nolan, and we end up finding, it seems, Burton's uh, corpse. And so Daniel relays to Nolan that they had gone on and sent those mercenaries from the dark web, and that also Daniel is to kind of go on and tell Nolan like everything that they have already done in the previous episodes. This is all just review at this point. And so Nolan is just be like, all right, okay. So we have Flynn that's talking to Wilf, and we have Wilf that is stating that that Flynn is going to get set up a peripheral. And come to find out, when Flynn is to be away from her headgear, we had a moment where Flynn was taking a shower and she was wiping the mirror, and all of a sudden she saw her other self, her avatar self. And so Flynn, I guess, could possibly be like Neo from the Matrix, how Flynn could possibly go on and be able to like be like in the 2032 self, but then also she might be able to quickly be in the 99 self. So Flynn is to go on and take, or Wilf ends up taking Flynn out into London and is to have Wilf explain to Flynn that she, of course, is 70 years into the future. And so I'm like, so we have a person from the past who desperately needs to go on and do all these missions and kind of help out the future? It seems like the opposite way of Terminator. I guess maybe they don't have like I was thinking that this was just some fake reality, as I thought is what 2099 really was. Like I just thought it was some gaming realm, and but so anyways, we have Wilf who is talking to Flynn and stating that he realizes that Flynn's mother is really sick, and Flynn doesn't realize how sick she really is. Because Wilf is to get the obituary somehow of Flynn's mother, and she will die 4 weeks from now, and from Flynn's timeline. And so Wilf is to tell Flynn that the medication that they have in the future can help her mother and cure her of her illness. But then they also backpedal in the later part of this episode to state that there is no guarantees that this medication will also work. So what is it that they're really going to do here? Is it going to be like a back and forth where it seems like it's working at first, then it doesn't work, then it is working, like, and then they finally kill the character off? Like, are they going with that? I don't know. But so we have Flynn, who goes to like accept working with Wilf just because Wilf is to go on and give Flynn this medication. And so once Flynn goes on and leaves talking to Wilf, she then goes to Pharma John's and with Connor, because of course Flynn is telling Burton that she needs to go out. So Burton's like, well, you're not going to go alone. And so Connor is going with her. Because, of course, Connor was to come in after Burton and all the guys seemed to get pinned down. And Connor just started blasting through all of these guys and was to state that Flynn was to say that if he ever wanted to come over for beers, that he could, but he didn't realize that he was going to get mixed up in all of this fun. So, killing all of these men. So, Connor goes with Flynn to this pharmacy, and she gets this medication, and she ends up going on to give her mother this medication. And the interesting thing that I saw that ends up getting like answered for me somewhere else down the road. When Flynn was going on and talking to her mother, specifically in this episode, I don't think I caught it before, but I was to catch now that Flynn's mother seemed to have been blind, and that's because she actually was blind. I was like, oh my god. And so, because it seems that Flynn's mother was not really like exactly looking at her when she was talking, so it was like, is she blind? And then come to find out she was. So Flynn is to talk about the tumor, and so Flynn's mother was to state, it's like, well, yeah, like, if anything, I didn't want to worry you guys, and plus also, like if she was gonna die, then like what could she go on and how could she break it to her kids that she was going to die, and plus also like how could she like explain that to them? So we had Flynn that's like, well, like this medication that might work on you, it's experimental, and Flynn's mother's just like, well, like then what could be worse? Like if anything, like could the medication just kill me quicker? Because like that'll be the only worst side of it, because she's going to die anyways. So Flynn goes on and gives her the medication, and we have Flynn's mother in the later part of the episode who is getting up to go to the fridge because she is now hungry. And I'm like, oh my god, so yeah, she's definitely getting a turnaround. She's actually getting better. And Flynn is to talk to her mother, and she's like, "Oh my god, like I can see again, like I'm not blind." And so Flynn is to have this kind of huggy moment with her mother, like, "Oh my god, this is great." So we also, when Flynn was to unhook, and after she had given uh, unhook from the 2099, we had Flynn who was to talk to Burton about giving their mom this medication and the intel also. So Flynn was to mention that when Flynn is to be this robot like thing, she is 70 years into the future, and Burton's like, "What? Like, that's what the sim is? Like, it's just you being in the future?" And so Burton's like, "Well, I guess there has to be a thing that went on and had them prove this to you because you're convinced that they're telling you the truth here." And so Flynn goes on in his estate. It's like, "Well, yeah, like they sent me this drug that is supposed to help our mother." And Burton's like, "How can you go on and trust these people?" And Flynn's like, "Well, like it seems like the drug is working." And Burton's like, "I don't know, we can't really trust these people. Like, how do you know that it's going to, like, 100% cure her?" And Flynn's like, "Well, I don't know, but, like, it's worth a shot." So, Flynn is to also state to Burton that Wilf gave Flynn the obituary and it seemed real, it looked real. And so Burton's like, "Okay, all right, like maybe we can believe these people." So we go on to have Flynn, who is again going back in to the sim to talk to Wilf, and then when talking to Wilf, it seems that Lev and Ash and whoever is to just kind of listen in on their conversation and then kind of walk out and just be like, "Hey, yeah, like it seems like you've made Lev is to kind of walk out there." So Lev is to go on and say that like, "Oh, okay, I guess you've talked to Will, so now you can talk to all of us, and so let's kind of go on and tell you what you like need to like give to us and how you can help us." So because there's a whole missing woman that we're gonna have Flynn try to give to them or hand over to them, and so Flynn is to go on and ask Lev about the medication that is to be for her mother, and they admit that the medication doesn't always work for everyone. And then there's a possibility that there's like a 60% chance that it might not work. So Flynn is just like, "Well, like, if you're not going to give me much of a guarantee because, hey, you guys are in the future, like, fix that crap, like, make it so that it does work, then I don't know if I can go on and like help you do what you need to do." And so Flynn is to also ask, like, "Well, hey, like when she's not in her avatar body, like what does this body do?" And Lev is just like, "Well, like your robot like thing or your stub thing has an 8-hour sleep cycle. And plus also supposedly this thing is to have like an autopilot mode, I think is what they kind of said in a roundabout way, uh where like this robot or this stub does have certain tasks, I guess. Like I'm really going on and taking liberties here, but anyways. So we have Flynn that goes on and is to seemingly continue to want to work with these guys and talk things out. And so Flynn and Wilf continue to kind of talk to one another, and we have a point where Lev is to really just go on and like pull Wilf aside and just be like, well, hey, like, you know how like I treat good friends and how I also like treat people that I don't trust. Um, like Lev is basically teasing to Wilf. It's like, well, I hope I don't lose your trust, Wilf. And it's like, is Wilf at some point going to have to choose a side? Is he going to choose Flynn over Lev? Is there going to be some kind of breakdown here of of these characters? Are we going to find out that like Lev might be working for the villain side of things? We don't even realize it. Who knows? Not quite yet. So Flynn leaves, and so we end up going on to have Burton and Flynn going to this bar where they're to talk things out. And Connor ends up coming up about, like, well, it seems that Flynn has been spending an awful lot of time with Connor, so on and so forth. But also, like, Flynn is to talk to Burton about all she's learned, and so on and so forth. Just a lot of just dialogue here, blah 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 blah. Anyways, um, so kind of after that, we end up finding out that Corbell Pickett, the guy who went on and kind of bashed Cash's head, the guy who it seems uh, had let Connor and Flynn slip through his fingers, hence why the guy bashed him onto the table. We find out that Corbell is to also be able to have an avatar, and he is talking to people from the future also. And it's like, oh, okay, all right. So if it seems that Flynn and Lev and Wilf and whoever are to have their avatar, we have Corval, who is to also go on and be working for, I believe it was Noland. And so, like, we have, like, two people that are kind of working on opposite sides here. So, with that said, yeah, that kind of does cover most of this episode. I know this was probably fairly quickly compared to the first episode. I kind of really rushed through this one. We also had Constantine. So Constantine was to, of course, go on and make his way to Burton's place to ask Burton questions. So Burton is kind of distracting Constantine from kind of going anywhere else while these guys are kind of burying these bodies still. So we have Constantine, who is the guy who had went off to kind of drop off uh, stuff for the 3D printing thing, and that they, of course, were like, this was the guy who had printed off his bride and groom uh, figurines. So, anyways, so we had Constantine who was talking to Burton, and Constantine gets suspicious of why Burton has so many cars parked in front of his house, and so it's like, well, like, we're going on and doing a tournament, and I think it was like a drone tournament, and so Burton was thinking that Constantine like would be interested in that, because Constantine was kind of thinking, it's like, well, hey, like, are you guys making like a like a huge meal? Are you going on and grilling or something? And so Burton ends up making the excuse about, oh no, they're going on and doing drones. So Constantine ends up leaving and realizing that there's not much here to really like kind of sink his teeth into, because of course Constantine was to have been driving around to all of a sudden see this coffee cup that is floating in midair. Constantine goes on to find that once he moves this coffee cup, he then is to touch on to this car and then realizes that it is a car. And so he ends up kind of going on and kind of sliding his fingertips to at some point see the car door and the kind of the thing to open up the door. So we have Constantine that is bizarrely just messing with this invisible car to make it visible and hits buttons onto the car to then make it visible again. And then when he closes the car is then invisible. So we have Constantine just thumbing through these cars that are now to be both visible, and Constantine ends up seeing the the bullet slug, or the bullet. So we then have Constantine that goes to Burton and is to ask Burton, like, well, hey, like, does this shell casing, does this bullet look familiar to you? And Burton's like, well, like, yeah, like it seems like I've seen that in kind of like war and so on and so forth. And so it's like, oh, okay, well, like, whatever that really meant. So, so yeah, so with that said, that kind of quickly covers a lot of what happened in this episode. It's kind of weird to kind of leave off that because that's not how exactly the episode ends. Uh, but anyways, I think that is going to go on and just be good enough. I kind of rushed through this because of all of it being just a lot of dialogue, and plus also like I'm kind of getting very tired, of course. But let me know in the comments below if there's anything that I did forget about, because I'm sure that there probably is. But either way, I think I'm going to go on and maybe call this one a wrap. I think there's like kind of a little bit more of something that I want to kind of cover, so I might need a second here. But, anyways, goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody. All right, let's go on and correct myself a little bit, because we Corbel. Corbel was, of course, to go on, and I was trying to figure it out. Corbel had gone on to eventually just play like a normal video game that is to have been at this certain location, and it seems that Corbel was to meet with a girl named Carmen, and then Daniel walks in. So it wasn't Nolan after all. Nolan had nothing to do with this, it seemed. So Daniel comes in there and is to offer Corbel like $10 million to go on and take out both Flynn and both Burton. And Corbel's like, "Hey, did you hack my game?" Like, and so Corbel is to go on and detach himself, and then he ends up going and uh, laying next to his wife, and she asks him about Savannah, and he ends up going like, "Yeah, that was fun." But then all of a sudden, Corbin is to look at his phone, and he is to see that there is this big advance that goes into his phone. We also had a whole thing that I forgot about Connor and Burton. Burton, of course, was to go to Connor's place and realize that Connor was to kind of like be passed out drunk on his couch. And so Burton ends up adjusting Connor's gun. And when Connor then wakes up and he has his gun handy, we have Burton that's going on, and both him and Connor are having this argument about why Burton doesn't go on and visit him more often. It's like, well, because you have a gun on you, that's why. And so we also have Burton and Connor who are kind of just talking about how Burton may need Connor soon. And Connor, of course, is a state that like that he was to have bumped into those mercenary guys before, and out of pity, they didn't do anything to him. And so Connor is realizing maybe his depression is, or his just really him wanting to drink so badly is because everyone is to go on and pity him and to really go on and feel sorry for him. So we also end up having both uh, Flynn and Burton. The reason why they go to this bar is because they come to find out that Wilf is going to go on and try to figure out some way to give Flynn and Burton money. And the way in which that they go about doing that is by the lottery, where they end up having Burton and Flynn's cousin win the lottery, and he's like, "Yeah, like this is great." So we go on to also have Burton who talks to Flynn about the game that she was in prior in the first pilot episode, where Flynn had gone on to figure out about the sheep, that if she only was to have gone on and like released this sheep, that like that basically just set the game in motion. And how is it that Flynn had figured that out? And Flynn was just like, "Oh no, that was just common sense." And Burton's like, "Well, like then I think that more than just our cousin is kind of lucky here. That Flynn is much more lucky than we think that she is." So yeah, I just needed a moment to just kind of think that over, because it's really for me it's getting to that late time of me just needing to just take a moment. So with that said, thank you for going on and listening to me for however which mistakes that I've made, and I have to go on and re-correct myself. Uh, but I feel that other than that, I hope that everything else besides that is all said and done with. Flynn was to also try and look up the Cold Skin Company that she, of course, was to have gotten that equipment for Burton, the whole headgear and so on and so forth. And when we also had Flynn look up Wilf online, it seems like she was not getting much answers, or even West, she wasn't giving much answers. And so when she started to continue to like Google all of these answers, all of a sudden it seems that uh, that Flynn's hand was to all of a sudden stop trying to work, trying to force her not to go on and look any further into the future. And so I'm kind of wondering if Flynn is to more and more realize that maybe either in the real world or in this other world, she might not have control over herself, because maybe when she's not doing what she's supposed to, there is going to be something that ends up kind of snapping back, and it's like, oh no 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 no, like don't go on and do that, or I'm going to stop you because you can't do that. So with that said, I think that goes on and hopefully does then cover correctly what all goes on within this episode. Uh, yeah. So goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.